All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this February 11th regular Board of Ed meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, as we begin tonight, I wanted to take a moment to remember Tricia Valdez, a cherished member of our educational community. Ms. Valdez dedicated over 20 years of her life to teaching in our district, leaving an indelible mark on the hearts and minds of countless students. She will always be one of the ELA ladies. Her passion for education and her ability to connect with students were truly remarkable. Ms. Valdez was more than just a teacher. She was a mentor, a guide, and a friend to many. Her legacy of kindness, knowledge, and inspiration will continue to live on through the lives of her students and her friends and colleagues. On a personal note, I'd like to acknowledge the significant impact Ms. Valdez had on my children's education. As a teacher and mentor, she guided them through various projects and selected books that resonated with each of them during their 8th grade ELA classes. Her contributions made their middle school experience better for them and many other students. Even after they transitioned to high school, Ms. Valdez continued to stay in touch, offering her support and expertise. She worked closely with one of my sons on his short stories, driven by his potential and writing abilities. Driven by her belief in his potential and writing abilities. I know my experience was not unique. It was also just shared with us today that 6 Somers students are being recognized as 2025 Hudson de Housatonic Scholastic Writing Award recipients. One of the recipients was Ms. Valdez's student, and the parents shared that Ms. Valdez's dedication to her students extended far beyond the classroom. She was the one who inspired my daughter to enter the contest, and Ms. Valdez's influence meant so much to her. We are deeply grateful for the time Ms. Valdez spent with us, for her unwavering commitment to educating our children, and for the profound impact she had in our community. Her memory will forever be a part of our district, and her influence will resonate in the achievements and successes of her students. Our thoughts and heartfelt condolences go out to Ms. Valdez's family, friends, and all those who were fortunate enough to know her. She will be dearly missed, but her spirit will remain with us always. I think Harry wanted to say something as well.
I reconnected with Trish Valdez last year as a teacher here in the district. I didn't realize it at the time, but I guess just after Thanksgiving this year, we had a little conversation, and she reminded me that I was actually her assistant principal when she was in high school in North Rockland, in Rockland County in the early 90s. And then since her passing, some of her colleagues shared with me that she shared with them that my wife was actually her Spanish teacher while she was in high school, and they formed a connection during their time together over the death of Trish's mom back again in the early 90s. So it's deeply heartfelt condolences to Trish's family.
I would just like to express my heartfelt condolences to Ms. Valdez's family, friends, and colleagues. It's just an absolute tremendous loss to the Tusker family, and she'll be truly missed.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for allowing us to speak on her. So now we will move on to the Student Council report with our Student Council President, Jimmy Gallivan.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to just give some updates about recent events at the high school. So in 21st Century Knowledge and Skills, more specifically the arts, the Class of 2026 Class Board recently hosted a district-wide talent show at the high school. We had a lot of amazing performances and a really good audience, and it was overall a really good time. Additionally, in athletics, the championship season for sports, winter sports, is in full swing. A lot of teams are going to championships, sectionals, and are doing really well. So, additionally, congratulations to McKenna Mullins, who qualified for the New York State Championships in the all-around event. And on February 6th, the Governor Mario M. Cuomo Bridge in Tarrytown was lit up in Somers colors to celebrate the Somers football championship earlier this year. third straight championship. In social, emotional, physical wellness, more specifically counseling, students are currently having their junior college meetings with counselors, talking about different colleges they're interested in, plans for college and life after high school, and preparing for testing and more. And in Student Council, this week Student Council posted paper hearts in the halls of SHS with the names of every student and staff member in the building represented, to show that as a SHS community, everyone is loved at SHS. Students can find and turn in their hearts for candy in the Student Life Center this week as well. In global citizenship, more specifically Student Council, from January 30th to February 2nd, I attended the National Association of Student Councils and National Honor Society Conference in Chicago, Illinois, as New York State's representative to the National Student Council. There were over 1,500 students at the conference there, and I was able to network, meet a lot of new people from around the country, around the world, and bring back a lot of really cool ideas to Somers to implement in our student council and in our school buildings. So that's all I have for tonight. I want to thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, this brings us to our first public comment section of the evening for agenda items, which is pretty much the budget. If anyone has any public comment on agenda items. Okay, then that will bring us to our central office report, where Chris will bring us into the instructional budget.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm just pulling it up here on the screen. Just give me a second. All right. So as Amanda said, tonight we'll be doing the instructional part of the budget. Last meeting in January, we did the non-instructional, so now we're moving on. Contents for tonight, again, I'll quickly just go over the budget development process, and then we'll get into each of the buildings' budgets, as well as special education, and then we'll talk about some full-time equivalent adjustments for staffing, as well as just a summary of expenditures as we currently stand today. And if you recall, last year we changed the format of this presentation a little bit, so we're continuing with that format this year, where we're going to have each of the buildings come up and help talk about some of the sampling of services and programs that they have in each of their buildings. So once we get to each of the buildings, we'll have each one of those principals come up to speak about that. So again, budget development cycle, we're still smack dab in the middle of it as information continues to change daily. So I do like to emphasize, and I probably will a couple times during this presentation, that these numbers that we're putting out there, even in the last presentation, are what they were on that day. Things constantly change as we look to adjust and we get new information, new students coming in, new needs identified for students and whatnot. So we'll continue to tweak the budget up until budget adoption in April. Again, all of this leading to that budget and trustee vote on May 20th of this year. Again, my favorite slide here is the annual budget that needs to be balanced every year. So we have to have revenues matching expenses when we propose the budget. Again, some of our larger revenues, property taxes, state aid, and sales tax. And then tonight there's one slide just on some anticipated revenue. The next meeting in March is where we'll dive a lot more deeper into the revenue side of the budget. And then on expenses, we do have salaries and benefits are obviously our biggest expenditure, and then transportation and debt service. So first building up is Primrose. Principal of Primrose, Mrs. Katie Winter, and Principal of Intermediate School, Linda Belger, will come to the podium here. Again, a lot of the services and programs that are offered span both Primrose Elementary and Somers Intermediate School, so they'll kind of piggyback off each other. But I'll first dive into this kind of first slide, just some of the numbers here. That top line is salaries, obviously making up the large majority of the total budget for the Primrose building. Again, that includes salaries for administrators, general education, special education teachers, teaching assistants, teacher aides, et cetera. Every salary that we attribute to that building will be accompanied in that line. The only one that we really kind of pull out are the custodial staff that we already talked about in our non-instructional budget when we talked buildings and grounds. So not too many significant changes here in the budget. Just the one note there is under textbooks. You'll see that first column is actual expenditures for the 23-24 budget. The second column is what's currently budgeted for this year's budget and what we're proposing now for next year's budget. And that's the same format we'll do for each of the buildings. But so that textbook line you'll see there for last year's expenditures are quite a bit higher than what we budgeted this year and what we're budgeting next year. And that's due to the initial cost of some of the Wit and Wisdom materials as we revamped our reading curriculum there. And then here it just lists out all the different staff that is associated with Primrose, again, from gen ed teachers, special ed teachers, counselors, psychologists. They're all encompassed in this building. There's a lot of people that work there. There's a lot of students. There's a lot of needs. So we try our best to provide what we can here.
What's covered under the B.O.E services?
Oops, sorry.
Is that always a year behind or no?
So these are actual expenditures that we're looking at
Okay.
for BOCES. So some of this might be Science 21 curriculum that's in there that we get through BOCES. Then
Yeah, the
some,
social studies ELA.
Yep. And then just some various workshops that we might send some of our staff to down at BOCES as well.
So thank you, Chris. We always appreciate the opportunity to speak with the Board of Education about our elementary school budgets. You will see that when you take a look at the budget and you take a look at the slides up there, that the budget closely mirrors our success plans that we reviewed with you at the beginning of the year. And the execution of the success plan is only accomplished with the dedicated and skillful personnel we have working in Somers. When we look up there at the personnel from classroom teachers to AIS, our specialists, our teaching assistants, all have a specific role that make instruction possible, both in the classroom, in small groups, and at the individual level. And Chris talked about that large expenditure. This year, that large expenditure in textbooks reflects our continuing adoption of new materials aligned with the science of reading. So our literacy foundation has always been foundations for phonics instruction and Hegarty for phonemic awareness. Now we have further enhanced our literacy block with Wit and Wisdom, which serves as that knowledge block component that we had talked about under the science of reading. Recently, our students completed some engaging modules. Kindergartners explored the 5 senses. Our first graders explored how books change lives. And second graders investigated the season, answering the question, how does change impact people and nature? And then also under reading, we enhanced our classroom libraries with 2 new collections, Geodes and Foundations readable texts, and those both support small group instruction in reading. And then lastly, our social emotional curriculum and mental health personnel continue to make great strides in helping students access instruction and regulate their emotions. But I'll turn it over to Mrs. Belger to let her build on that.
So the continuity between Primrose and SIS is so important to ensure that our students have a smooth transition. And many of the same programs Katie talked about are also at SIS. And this provides a lot of consistency and a strong foundation for our students' academic and social and emotional growth. As Katie mentioned, with social and emotional growth and wellness, we have social workers and we have our guidance counselors who they provide small class, small group instruction, whole class instruction, and individual supports for our students. And these supports really help our students foster resilience, emotional intelligence, and a positive school experience. This year, SIS also incorporated a health curriculum for our students. In health, our students are really working on learning about body systems, nutrition, exercise, and healthy choices for themselves, and that's been a nice balance to our social emotional wellness curriculum. Additionally, there's the progression from Primrose to SIS in all of our subject areas. At SIS, we finished Foundations. It ends at the end of 3rd grade, so that's part of that reading curriculum. And now we are also into Wit and Wisdom, which is really giving us that ELA instruction, incorporating the principles of the science of reading, helping students develop literacy skills through that rich content and background knowledge. We also have Science 21, our social studies ELA curriculum through B.O.E, and Science 21 and everyday math. So all of those skills that they're learning at Primrose, we're just continuing to develop them in the structures for our kids. This year, at both schools, we've also expanded our approach to world language. At Primrose, students received an introductory exposure to Spanish, and at SIS, this experience deepened. World language is now a designated curriculum and special area at SIS, and as students get into 5th grade, they're introduced to Spanish, Italian, and French, which will help that transition and help them make an informed decision of what language they want to continue to study when they come over to the middle school. So it's that work with our success plans and aligning our programs that really give the priorities through all of our schools. So we ensure that our students are supported, challenged, and prepared for each step of their journey. And we're really trying to get our students ready to go to SMS, so they're ready to face those challenges.
Thank you, Linda. And I will certainly remember for next year just to reorder my slides so I can jump right into Linda's there. But I'm just going to go back a little bit, back to the SIS building budget summary here. Again, nothing drastic. You'll see that textbook line again for 23-24 showing the initial cost of those Wit and Wisdom materials that they spoke about. So very similar to Primrose there. You will see on the salary line, it is projected to go down a little bit for next year. That is due to some retirements and a position that we're not replacing, which we'll talk about a little later in the presentation, and then also just some reclassification of some budget codes for some people. So that's why that's going down slightly for next year. And again, just the staffing slide is just listing out, everyone that is at SIS for the year.
Chris?
Yeah.
You're still on the SIS?
Yes.
Right? On the FTE number, I just noticed that the FTE, the general education is add up to 43 and special ed is 44. Is that first time special ed FTE is more than the general?
Special ed FTE.
Yeah, if you add them, the numbers
with the
you
teachers,
have there.
teaching assistants, and aides. Part of the reason for the increase in special ed support at the intermediate school is for an additional skip class that we're going to be having there next year.
Yeah, I just wonder whether the principals noted whether anything that we should be sort of aware of. Is this just little ripple, or is this a trend that is really growing up there?
So I came up because I had a
Yeah,
feeling.
that's your special.
So you may remember, again, I expect you all to memorize my slides. So when you may remember back in January when I presented, I was mentioning that each special education class, whether that's a 12-1-1, which is 12 students to one teacher to one TA, or a 12-1-2, or a 12-1-3, an 8-1-2, right, co-teach, all of our. Once there's a special education teacher, there is also one or more TAs. And that's just depends on the needs of the students. And as Chris mentioned, we have another, the needs of our students are changing and are, I'm going to say, more intensive. And so in order to keep them in district, we need a smaller student to staff ratio. So there's an 8-1-2 at Primrose. There's an 8 here. For the first time in a long time, there will be an 8 at SIS next year, so in all 3 buildings, K-8. So when we say 8-1-2, that's already 1 teacher to 2 TAs, plus those students often have one-to-one assistance for behavioral needs, medical needs, or learning needs. So that's the intensity of student needs has increased, so then we need to increase the levels of offerings in terms of number of classes, and each of those classes then comes with both teacher and TA assignments that needs to happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right. But historically, do you notice is any fast increase or some? I'm really asking an educational question: is how the society or school districts should really think about, the student body, how, general things are changing. Are we doing the right thing or enough, to...
So I can tell you in terms of our self-contained instructional programs, again, those smaller staff-to-student ratios, that has more than doubled over the past 3 years. For us, and we are not alone in that. That is throughout. I think more and more districts are trying to keep students in district as opposed to sending them out of district, and so they're creating programs in-house. But certainly the needs of students and the, I'm going to say, complexity of needs of students is certainly changing, and we've seen an uptick, and we've also seen an increase just in our percent of classified students. Right? We were for a long time we were sitting at 16-17%, and now we're up at 20%. So yes, it has been increasing. I don't know if I can point to societal reasons why, but I can just tell you we are not alone in that. We are, amongst Westchester and New York, that is the trend.
I saw a big difference in that number from the intermediate to the middle school. Are we able to get them past those needs?
Yeah, that's a great question.
That they're seeing in intermediate school? Is that why there's such less
sometimes
staffing for that?
Yeah, so that's the hope, right? That over time, as the children grow and get more skills, they need less adult support. What'll end up happening, right? So if we could sort of anticipate a little bit, because I'm putting another class at SIS next year, those students are eventually going to move up to the middle school. So might I eventually only have one at SIS again and then two in middle school while that cohort moves up and grows? Perhaps. But yes, we often see by the time they get to middle school, because we provided so many intensive supports at the elementary level, they need less. And that's the hope, right? That we can keep reducing that as children gain independence and skills.
And that also fits with what you said back in January with the earlier intervention and the more intensive the intervention at a younger age, hopefully we'll be able to overcome some of those challenges.
Nice job memorizing what I said. Good job, Daryl. Good start for that.
Good job, Daryl.
Sticks.
Will that staffing move if need be from SIS to like the middle school?
Yeah. Every year we have conversations about what are the certifications of our staff. I'll say staff, not just even teachers, assistants, aides, what's their skill set, who are they best suited to work with. And then, yes, we have a conversation about where's the need and where are people going. We do that at each building, and then we do that as a whole administrative team also. Yeah.
A little finer question, maybe. In SIS, the FTE numbers of distribution, how many are used to say in this second grade, third, fourth, fifth? Do you have a distribution idea that hopefully when the kids grow older, the higher grade, we have sort of a less need for service or any special things. If we can sort of really help them, they outgrow certain things, right?
Yes.
Are we observing that?
Yes, so that sort of goes back to what Pat was just mentioning, is that the middle school numbers you'll see are a little less in terms of teaching assistant support, right? Because sometimes a child doesn't need the one-to-one at all. Other times we can move it so that it's a shared aid amongst two children, because they don't need quite as much support, but they still need some. But yes, we typically see as children get older, there's less support needed.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, in the special ed teaching assistants at SIS, it's 25. That's amongst the 3 grades and the different class types, right?
Correct.
So like you're talking
Correct. And
co-teach,
one-to-ones
small
and-
special
yeah.
class, and yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Any more questions? Okay, we'll move on to the middle school.
Should I stay?
Might as well.
Might as well.
Just in case, I'll stay.
So we have Principal Jen Mangoni here tonight to speak on the middle school. First, we'll look at some of the numbers here. Again, nothing drastic, just very similar to Primrose and SIS. The one note I did just make here is in the service agreements and other contractual line, where it's going up, it's gone up a little bit from 23-24 to now 25-26 here, and that's largely due to the additional days for the student assistance counselor that's housed at the middle school that's paid for by the general fund. So we do get a drug-free communities grant that we've been getting for the past 6 or 7 years now. And we've added the days for the middle school to that grant, but that grant is going to be ending, so we're kind of weaning ourselves off of that grant to maintain that support. So we've been adding a day to the general fund that they cover for that student assistance counselor here each year now. So in the next couple of years, if that grant ends, then we'll be able to fully fund that through the general fund.
This way you can keep the longevity of the program,
Correct.
but without having the assistance of the grant, you're saying?
Yep. So the grant was supposed to end after 10 years. There has been some talks about extending it for another 5, so that would be helpful. They do provide us with $125,000 a year for that. So that does help cover the cost for student assistance counselor here as well as at the high school too.
And if the grant were to be extended, we could just keep it wouldn't be coming out of our actual budget then, you're saying?
We could wean ourselves back off of that, but they also want to make sure that you can continue with the
Right.
program after the grant does in fact
Okay.
end. So if we already have it built into the general fund,
Might
we'd
as well
probably
keep
leave
it.
it there and use that money from the grant elsewhere.
Okay.
It does help, they do provide money for some of the speakers that come in to the school to help talk about some of the substance abuse and whatnot. So we could just look at some different avenues to explore with that additional funds if we do end up getting it for another 5 years. I'm not going to go through all the staffing, but there it is. And then now, Jen, you can talk a little bit about some of the programs and services that the middle school has to offer.
Sure. So under 21st Century Knowledge and Skills, obviously we are continuing our work in developing our MYP units, following that framework, but using our New York State curriculum and standards. As you saw when you visited us in the fall, continuing to expand our WIN instruction and our small group support that happens during the WIN period, as well as the enrichment instruction that happens during that period, has been a tremendous feat that the faculty has taken under their wings, and you all got to experience the fruits of that labor in the fall during your visit. This year we welcome Mrs. King to our team in supporting our students through the ALP program. So she is both at SIS and SMS supporting our ALP students, and she runs WIN classes for them, providing enrichment in all of the content areas, in addition to the math support and enrichment that she provides. And then the biggest focus really for us next year will be honing in on the work in our pathways related to both math and science. So last year we did a lot of work in the alignment, data collection, and recommendation process for our accelerated math pathways, and pivoted our approach to student entryway to that more accelerated curriculum. Next year we will be doing the same in science, and we are looking forward to welcoming back Earth Science to our 8th grade curriculum. That will offer another entry point for students to attain higher level science curriculum here at the middle school, and offer more entryways and opportunities for pathways that then transition them to the high school. Again, just more access for students and more opportunities for them to move forward in their learning and knowledge. For families, I know I'm going to get like 10 emails right now. How do we do that? All of the information about course recommendations and pathways will be coming in the coming month, as well as discussions and support for what does that look like and what does my child need and how does this work in their schedule and all of that. We're looking forward to supporting families and making the appropriate choices for their students that will both support their growth and development at any stage in time. And just a reminder that if your student does not go on an accelerated pathway at the middle school level, that does not mean that the door is closed to them to higher level curriculum at the high school. The high school has done amazing work, and Pete will talk about that in terms of pathway entry points. There's so many pathway entry points, so this just offers yet another entry point for our learners to access content and curriculum at a different time. In the social emotional wellness piece, I was going to highlight our student assistance counselor. Obviously, the collaboration between our student assistance counselor as well as our social emotional learning interventionists are key and pivotal to the middle school, and we feel that and see that every day. In particular this week during times of trauma and grief, their services are beyond valued and needed. So even if the grant goes away, the magic of Chris's work ensures that that support is here to keep all of our students and our staff really supported. As well as our middle school mentor program, which is run by Ms. Cespedes, who is our SEL interventionist, but also in partnership with Ms. Casey, who is our student assistance counselor. And that middle school mentor program matches 8th graders with 6th graders, and they push in during their lunch and recess, creating connections, bonds, modeling appropriate peer behavior, and just kind of creating that communal connection between our oldest and our youngest learners here in the building. And then the final thing is our global citizenship category, and I'm going to hone and plug that you come again to our community showcase where our 8th graders highlight their community projects. I've been meeting with small groups as they start to pitch their projects. One group wants to put a digital sign in front of the middle school, a la the high school, and they've been researching companies, and their next sign is to email Chris about what would this cost. But so many great ideas and wonderful projects. I think you're going to be really blown away with the creativity and ingenuity that is coming out of our 8th graders and things that they like to bring both to the local and larger community. So that's what I've got, Chris.
Do they include fundraising in their proposals?
Oh, I did point them towards SEF to write grants.
Start thinking.
I know, the community showcase is already on my calendar.
Already on
I won't forget to go. And what do you call it? I know Mrs. Scatino also informed us this week that, or last week, I guess, about the Gibbs grant from
Yes.
IB to work towards, for kids to give a pitch to work towards funding for some of their community projects. Which I think
So
is
we were
great.
one of only 5 schools to be awarded a grant through Gibbs that provides funding for students to get funds to get their community project up and running. I'm actually meeting with Ms. Scatino and Ms. O'Connor after the break to organize our panel and discussion. Students are going to pitch their projects, and some of the students will be funded through that grant. So students also get that opportunity to kind of pitch and organize their project to a panel of educators and see if their project is funded, which is, it just adds an extra layer to the whole process.
You also anticipated my question about earth science and algebra, but with the, I'm sure you're all going to get a ton of emails, right? But I just think it's always so important to make sure that it's communicated well to the community or the parents of how the course selection process works. And if they don't feel it's right for their child, they can come in and communicate with you either way, whether, and see what you guys can work with, right? I mean, it's not said and done, and there's going to be a whole process of how those kids enter.
There's a whole process we will provide families with the data that we use to, inform decisions, as well as just having conversations about the things that are not in the data that help to support learners in an accelerated classroom environment in terms of executive function skills and organization and workload. Does your child play 4 sports? Maybe 2 accelerated classes is not the right choice at this time as a 13-year-old. So having those good conversations with families. Phil Kavanaugh assisted me with those last year, and we will continue to partner with them. And Phil provides for the families the great lens of what the transition looks like from our building to the high school building. And of course, as young as 7th grade, families are asking me, well, what does this mean for college, right? Yeah. And I think that's because we have really forward-thinking students and families here and who want to make informed decisions. So yes, Amanda, lots of communication coming. So please read the Friday flyer every week when I send it home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. See, it lets you plug the Friday flyer.
I know. Every opportunity I get.
And this is the 2nd year of the middle school mentors program. It sounds like it's going really well.
Yes, this is the 2nd year of the program. It's going really well. It's my favorite time to go to the cafeteria and see the 8th graders with the 6th graders playing games, doing karaoke. It's a wonderful opportunity to see that connection in the building between students of different grade levels.
All right.
Great.
Thank you, Jen.
Oh, you're welcome.
We will move to the high school now. Principal Pete Rodriguez is going to come up here. So just looking at some of the building budget summary here for the high school, the one item, again, that I'd like to point out is on the BOCES services. As you see, the actual expenditures back in 23-24 were just over $800,000, and the proposed budget for next year is just over $600,000. So, a significant decrease there. That's largely due to our career and technical education program down at BOCES. It's based on the number of participants. Obviously, we've had some declining enrollment over the last few years throughout the district. And that particular program, they go back 3 years and look at data points over those 3 years. And so data point that's falling off is one where we had more students and we had more participation in that program. So that's falling off for next year. So that's why we're seeing a significant budget drop in that code for next year. Everything else, nothing too drastic of a change for next year.
And you're saying those BOCES services are the kids actually going and partaking in those programs at BOCES?
Correct. Yep. We have this, again, all the staffing that's at the high school. It's obviously our largest building. And now Pete will discuss some of the programs and services that are offered at the high school.
Thanks, Chris. First of all, thank you to the board and the community for their continued support as we kind of wrap up the programs and services from the building level. I'm going to highlight just a couple of things in each category, but I did not know the word for the evening at the secondary level would be pathways. So this is all about pathways. And as you know, New York State will be putting forth a different graduation pathway or requirement. And what we have in front of you is us setting us up and our students up to be ready to find multiple pathways to receiving their graduation credentials. So the first thing I wanted to build on was the earth science returning to the middle school. That will, for students, open up opportunities for more advanced studies and other courses in the sciences at the high school. And then if you notice, we have a lot of opportunities for students to push themselves to higher level courses. So that shows up in a number of different ways, whether that's AP or our multiple dual enrollment courses or IB. So there's really a pathway for any student who wants to pursue higher level courses. They can mix and match. They can take an entire engineering sequence or a biomedical science sequence that will put them in a position, if they're ready, to kind of explore more niche topics as they get to the end of their high school career. In social, emotional, and physical wellness, we are really pursuing with gusto the idea of executive functioning and how that applies to high school students. Slight brag, we have the highest enrollment by building for the executive functioning training, which is also being offered by teachers from the district, which I think I can't emphasize how powerful that is to learn from your colleagues. And the other thing I wanted to highlight in the social emotional wellness is our college and career counseling services. I would call these almost borderline boutique services at this point. Michelle Tracy, who is our college and career counselor, is offering one-on-one workshops to complete FAFSA applications, or for families who are interested in pursuing NCAA athletics. She partnered with our director of athletics, Mark Haddam, to offer counseling and services so people could navigate the kind of complicated process that goes into effect when students want to pursue college athletics. That doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of what she does, but also just the general day-to-day meeting with students. So that just supplements our already existing counseling program, and I wanted to make sure we highlighted that. And then when we're thinking about global citizenship, that continues to build on this idea of pathways towards New York State graduation with the multiple ways that students can access internships and real-world learning. While our BOCES enrollment has commensurately gone down with our enrollment, we still have many students involved in the BOCES career and technical education program. And in fact, BOCES opened a new kind of high-level New Visions Health sports medicine program, and we already have students enrolled in that program. So our students are really kind of pursuing not only the career options and the certification options, but also the high-level sciences options that B.O.E offers. Additionally, we have 2 ways that students can access internships through our Just Senior experience. And in addition, students who are part of our alternative high school take on a more extensive internship that lasts for the entirety of their spring senior semester. And then finally, our 10th grade personal project is in its pilot phase. We just have our first group of 10th graders going through the personal project process, and some of those students will present personal projects that may have built on their already existing community projects, and that will continue to expand in the years to come. So that is just a little bit of a highlight of what we have at the high school.
I think you did a good job, Pete.
I was going to say, apparently you did such a good job, no one has any questions. I mean, it all looks very good.
I have a question. In high school, do you think the counselor, the 5 FTE is sufficient for high school?
I would say always that to have smaller caseloads is better, but I also think you have to balance that with the needs of the community, and the way we've done that is really looked at the entire counseling team, right? Not just the counselor proper, but we've expanded our wellness team to include 2 school psychologists and 2 social workers at the high school, and then that's trickled down to the other buildings. So I don't think it's just is 4 counselors and a college counselor enough? I think you have to look at the whole picture and really see how you're supporting students across the board.
And our counselor, as an employee, can they work in high school as well as middle school? I noticed in middle school has 4 FTE also. There's quite a number there.
In fact, I believe it's a K-12 certification. Counselors are a K-12 certification.
Pardon me?
Counselors are a K-12 certification, so they actually can work in any building.
Any grade level?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right, we actually have 2 counselors at Primrose.
That's good. Yeah, 2 Primrose, 1 in SIS. I think total 12. I think sometimes I just feel that whether the entire school could use the counseling in a more flexible way so that we get the maximum, effect.
I think our school does use the counselors in really dynamic ways. All students meet with counselors at various times during the year, but at the high school, we've really looked at the team approach. So to include counselors plus a social worker and a psychologist that get to know their group of students really well. So I think that's a way that the high school has really accessed counseling services and the wellness team in a unique way.
Yeah, I think in the earlier days, probably the counselors were more attached to the high school as graduation, college, and the sort of things. But as time goes on, we now, of course, as you say, expanded to social worker and other things. So overall, as a school district, certainly we should utilize these personnel in a more effective way, more dynamically to help the students. Yeah.
I just want to make another comment that the breadth and depth of the high-level quality pathways that are available to our students in our town, I think is commendable that we're able to maintain that and offer that, all the different types of needs and directions that our students want and need to head in. Those are just, it's fantastic that we have those options and that we're able to do it in such a quality way.
And I think it's important to highlight that those are open to all students through our open and guided enrollment process, and that we do have students with IEPs and 504s pursuing high-level, college-level work in high school. It's just about finding the right fit for that student.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Very important.
And I have to say, you guys have really set yourselves up well, I think, I mean, in my humble opinion, of getting ready for these portrait of a graduate changes that are going to be made. I feel like just with the multiple pathways you have, and it's going to be a smooth transition, I have a feeling.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, I always felt like the state is just catching up to us.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Pete.
Thanks, Pete.
We'll now move on to the special education budget, and Stacy will come back to the podium. Looking at salaries here, I just want to point out that those salaries are only for the central office for the special education department. That does not include teachers or any special ed teachers, teacher aides, teaching assistants. Those were all included in the building level budgets there. Couple items just to point out as they have larger increases for next year. That service agreement and other contractual line you see is going up to just shy of $900,000 for next year. Those are just additional support services that are required as part of an IEP for students that we need to provide. One of those such services would be a one-to-one nurse for a specific student. Again, these services are mandated as part of the IEP for the student. The other item to note is just the out-of-district tuition you'll see is going up to about $3.2 million next year compared to about $2.6 the last couple years. That is largely due to a couple of additional residential placements for students and a couple of other out-of-district placements for students. And Stacy will get into that a little bit, a couple slides down here. So the next slides are a repeat from Stacy's presentation last month, but just wanted to, again, show the breadth of services that we are providing students largely as required as part of the IEP and the process that they go through. So Stacy, you can now talk a little bit more about it.
Thanks. So just as Chris said, a repeat of some of the slides from January, just these are our classification areas. As I mentioned in January, learning disability, speech language impairment, and other health impaired and autism are our highest rates of classification. And other health impairment is really, I'm going to say a bit of a catch-all. If a student has any kind of diagnosed condition, if their testing and the way they're performing in school along with that diagnosis shows an impact, they can be classified as an other health impaired student. So it's a little less, just by looking at the title of that, it could be a little less, it's a myriad of conditions or issues a student might be facing if they have that classification.
Because each student has to fit into one of these 13
Yes, there's one of
classifications
13.
in order to gain an IEP.
Yes, once they're school aged, all preschoolers that are age 3 and 4, it's just preschooler with a disability. Once they hit grade K, you have to, if they are eligible for an IEP, you have to classify them under one of 13 categories. That's a state rule, not my rule. And this is just again, emphasizing in terms of related services, the red bars show the number of students and the gray bars show the number of hours per month that our practitioners are providing services to students.
And these are just IEP related?
Just IEP, right. So what I always tried to emphasize, and I did in January and I will again, is our practitioners also see students at the building level as well as students with 504s in some cases, which my numbers do not even reflect. So I think I mentioned before classification rates are about 20%. I think if we add 504s and the total population, I think we're at 25% of students have a document of some kind, whether it's an IEP or a 504. So it's, the needs are definitely there. And those practitioners do both 504s and IEPs as well as building level support for students that aren't on a document but are just good practice for students. This is the continuum of services. We have some students that are related service only, which may mean a speech, just a counseling, or just an OT or PT, all the way down to our out-of-district placements, and some of which are residential. That also includes a couple of students who we have that are on homebound instruction due to a myriad of health and medical and social emotional needs. These are just a smattering of our out-of-district placements. You can see that they fall into, 4 main categories. One is BOCES, and we apply sometimes for students to Putnam, Northern Westchester, Rockland, and Southern BOCES because they're close enough to us where we could bus a student for a day program if we needed to. All 3 of those BOCES not only have programs on their campuses, but in various local public school districts, just like we have BOCES renting space from us and providing programs from Putnam, Northern Westchester, so do other districts. And sometimes the program that's housed in a particular other school district might be a BOCES run program. We also have a couple of other public school districts where students are attending because they just may have a more specialized program than we do for a particular population of students. And then we have, of course, some students at state-approved schools or residential. Chris was mentioning before that some of the monies for out-of-district placements increased. The reason for that is we have 4 additional students in out-of-district placements, and I believe 2 of those are residential.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Stacy, how do we handle the finance of out-of-district public school programs with our neighbors, Bedford, Pleasantville, Hindhead, and Mayapack? Is it reciprocity, or is there like a kind of a cost per student to attend, and we just kind of exchange students and services?
It's not as clean as exchanging students, but there is a rate that is established for both for special education students per year, a per year cost. And if through CSE we are naming that district as the placement, and I should backtrack a minute. The process of doing this is quite, it takes a while, right? So we have evaluation information, we have the current IEP, we have, parents who are obviously very concerned that for whatever reason, this district, their home district, is not not working and not the correct placement for their child. So we have to have a conversation about, well, where else might we look? And then we send out an application in which we write a cover letter about the student. We send all their evaluations and IEPs, and then encourage them to reach out to us about the student. Then they set up intake interviews. If they say yes, they have a program, then we need to see if the parent accepts that program, and then we have a CSE meeting to formalize that placement. At which time, all of those forms and dots that I's that need to be dotted and T's that need to be crossed happen in terms of funding, because of the way the student is put into the student information system for special education. And then that funding mechanism kicks in, and then Chris knows, we have this many students who we're going to need to pay this for, much like we have a student this year from another district, so they're paying us that same fee for their special education student. So that's how it works.
Thank you. You answered my question. Thank you.
Sure.
Could I ask a question going backwards to the chart that for student classification?
Mm-hmm.
Those bars seem to add up to 100%. Your bar is representing percentage of the total student population?
No, great question. Just of classified students. So of our classified students, those are the percentages represented in each classification category.
For example, like autism, 10% is 10% of the
classified students. Correct.
So may I ask whether that would be how much percent in the total student population?
So as I mentioned,
about 20%.
Yeah, so 20% of our student population has classification. If you're asking me how many kids are learning disabled out of the percent of the total population,
right?
I don't. I'll do the math for you. And get back to you.
Sorry to ask that question, but I just think that it's something that we probably should have some idea.
Well, we know how
next time
many.
you tell me.
Well, we know how many students are classified. That was in her January presentation.
Right.
I believe it was 536, or that was
nice
with the out of.
That's with the out of district. Good job.
Yeah.
But the point is that every student, in order to have an IEP, has to be classified.
I'm sure you have the data, just not.
Yeah, it's not. I don't have it right here, but I can. Yeah. It's fine. I can put it in the dashboard this Friday.
We can talk privately or next time. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
So we just have a couple more slides here. This one here is FTE adjustments. It's full-time equivalent position adjustments, and this is where we project for staffing for next year. The staffing changes we're talking here are really teacher positions, because again, there's a lot of changes as far, depending on the needs of students with teaching assistants, teacher aides, and whatnot. So we're just showing some of the teacher staffing adjustments here. Primrose, we're not seeing any for next year. Intermediate school, we did talk about adding that additional skip class, so that's where the additional 1.0 is there. And then the one of note here is the reduction of a section of third grade. There's a retirement, and just looking at the numbers, which we're keeping a close eye on. So again, we sitting here today saying we're able to reduce a section in third grade for next year. But if we have additional students come in at any point, depending on the number that come in for that specific grade, we might have to put that back in, because we don't want class sizes to get too large. But
What's the maximum?
there's not a maximum per se, but currently right now in the intermediate school, classes are somewhere around 23 or 24. So this would still, even reducing that section, will put us right in line with that. But we don't, we're not looking to go much higher than that.
Because if we kept the third grade, it would be like, what, 20 students in a class as opposed to 23, 24?
Right. Yep.
So that's the difference of...
Yep. And like I said, we'll monitor it. We're always having students move in and move out. So if that number continues to increase, then we'll look to add that back in. But today, we're looking to remove that for next year.
So you're just bringing it in line with the 4th and 5th grade. So all 3 grade levels will have about...
Similar.
Yeah.
And then at the middle school, there's a reduction of a special education position. Again, that's just, due to the needs of the students, and we were able to make a reduction there by shifting staff from other buildings if necessary. And again, I just also want to reiterate that each one of these reductions are mainly due to retirements that we're just not filling.
So no one's losing a job, is what you're saying.
Yep. And then you see at the high school, we have 2, one in social studies, one in science. Again, high school, we've had reducing enrollment, declining enrollment for the last few years. It's hit the high school now, so there's a few areas like this where we felt like we maybe had enough staff, and we are able to move it. And some of these positions are now being moved to the middle school because there was retirements in those departments. So just shifting some of the staff from the high school down to the middle school.
Are there classes being dropped?
No, not
Is there
looking
a
at...
reduction in classes in any of these
Not looking
sections?
at a
or is it
reduction
just
of
because
offerings.
the-
Yeah, it's just the reduced, declining enrollment. Again, the high school, there's probably graduating like about 240, and incoming freshmen's about 180. So, there's about 60 kids that are, or maybe it's 260 and 200, but somewhere around 60 kids for next year that is going to be less at the high school. Summary of expenditures just shows, based on all the slides that we looked at tonight for each of the buildings in special education, looking at a total instructional increase of about 1.6 million. And then just to continue with that, so again, that's as of today. And then on,
So can we just talk about the red?
Yep.
By the way, because I think...
Sorry, yes.
No, I just want to make sure everyone's clear on the red. It's not...
So the red is a reduction in the overall budget for the intermediate school. Again, that's the reduction of the section, even though we're adding that additional skip teacher, but then also just some additional retirements that are going to be filled at that building with staff that won't be making as much as someone that's retiring. So then just showing on here, the non-instructional budget as it was presented on January 21st, that was about 46 million and about a $1.1 million increase. So obviously when you add the two together, it's about $100 million. Our budget's going to be more than that. It's going to be somewhere in the $113 million range, but there's some other district-wide expenses that weren't captured in any of the non-instructional areas that we looked at or the instructional building budgets today. Again,
again, I know you're looking at this as a snapshot of right now, today. And what's the overall change that we're looking at? How much of an increase?
Percentage or?
Percentage, both.
Yeah, dollar-wise, it's going to be somewhere in that 2.5 $2.5 to $2.8 million. Again, our budget this year is about 110, so you're looking at
113.
yeah, about 113-ish. I don't want to give any specific dollar amounts today.
Right, I understand.
But yeah, and again, the percentage will be somewhere in that 2.5%.
2.5%.
Yep. The maximum tax levy is somewhere around that 2.5%.
So we're going to stay under the tax levy.
We're looking to go to the maximum we can without seeking a supermajority.
Right.
Because that amount is lower than inflation has been.
Yeah, so the number that we get to use in the calculation is 2% for inflation, where I think currently it's just under 3. And we'll have some of those slides at the next presentation, but you know the last 3 or
Talking
4
about the
years
tax cap.
it's been 8% and 4, and so. But again, the only number we can use in that tax cap calculation is that 2%. So these are just some high-level anticipated revenue adjustments. See the tax levy there at about $2.2 million, increasing some county sales tax. State aid still to be determined. We did get our first runs from the governor's proposal. It does look like, as of right now, that we'll receive a 2% increase in foundation aid, which is about $200,000 for us. Building aid, I'm still working on finalizing some of those numbers. Just got to figure out some of the projects and when they're going to be completed. And then excess cost aid is also a number that I'm just working on. Those are some additional money that we get for special education high need cost students.
What's the amount? I know you have 2.2, so that's in addition to that we already currently raised from the tax levy, you're saying, and that's
Yep.
the money that we obviously raised from community members.
Correct.
So what is it right now, like 85 million roughly?
It's somewhere around 90 million.
90? Okay.
Yeah.
So then it would probably be like 92 million then you're saying next year
Mhm.
roughly.
Yes.
I think that's like always an important distinction, that we're not raising 113 million from the public.
Right.
We're raising 92 million
Right.
from the public. So.
Yes, and the rest is primarily state aid, as we just have, some small buckets in the other areas, sales tax and interest and whatnot. So that's what we're looking at currently. Next budget presentation will be in March, and that'll really drill down more into the revenue side of things, and we'll have an actual number of where we're projecting the budget to be at that moment, because again, there will be adjustments throughout the next month and a half or so.
If someone wants to see the details behind these numbers, when are those documents available?
So the public budget document doesn't get released until, a
adopted.
week or two before the budget there.
And then they'll be able to see line items and
Yep.
things like that.
Yep, we'll have all the necessary documents ready for anyone to come look, or they can look online.
We have to adopt the budget
Was it?
first,
Yep,
basically.
That's the
right, which is in
binder.
April, so.
Well, yeah, but we get the binder before the public gets it, because we have to adopt it first, so.
Well, Chris, you always, done a very good job on presentation on these budget analysis, and I almost felt like go to your office, work for you, and learn a lot more. One thing that I always personally interested in is to compare the hard numbers of spending, so on, with education, somehow correlate with education result. I know it's not your job really in sort of doing that correlation, but I think you could help. One number people throw out usually is a total dollars per student spending. That's per school district. For example, Chappaqua spends $39,000 dollars per student. So is Scarsdale. Our number actually is higher.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not too far off.
I don't know an exact number, but I think it's higher. If you take
What's their special education population?
Right. I understand. No,
I'm just-
let me finish my thoughts, okay? I think this is along again, my educational question, that how do we get our school district the best, and how do we get our dollars worth, So dollar per student that can be still break down is, that dollar can be broken down as, physical facilities and instructional cost. We can easily do that in your office.
Mm-hmm.
If I be your intern, for a week, I can get that number, right?
Sure.
So then, from instructional, we could also go down For example, we talk about today, the presentation, general education, special education. Then we can break it down again, special education of classification. You see, my line of questioning before and so on is, these questions have been in my head for a long, long time. Like could be 18 years. We should drive ourselves towards that direction in order to understand, peel the onions layer by layer, so we know exactly how we're spending our money, how do we get our results, and so on and so forth. I think your office has that data, that capability to provide to the educational staff here to understand our picture, and then for the board to appreciate how we're going to drive our school district in the future to get better and better, okay?
So some of it does get tricky.
This is not any criticism of anything. I mean, just hopefully we have more data, peeling more and more details so that we all understand much better, so we can push the school, for a better result. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Can I just say one thing on that, though? Like, I think why people take the total number of students and just divide it by the budget number, and you cut the 42 or whatever number it happens to be, 42,000 is because it's very complicated to say, okay, this student cost this much money because they worked with this teacher,
That's
that
exactly,
teacher,
we
that.
need to peel the onion.
But I don't think that's possible to do, because there's going to be a general education teacher who's going to work with special education kids, and then there's going to be special education teachers that are going to work with general education kids that aren't necessarily on their caseload per se, because that's the types of teachers they are.
It's difficult from this end going that way. However, from business office to provide understanding data to this side.
No, I'm saying even for the business office.
We will appreciate a lot more. I'm sure teachers may not have the time, energy to go through.
No, I'm not saying that, I wasn't implying that the teachers were going to do that. I'm not saying that, I don't even think Chris would be able, no offense.
That's why I was saying it gets tricky, like you were saying, if it's not like a gen ed teacher maybe just provides
I know
education to a gen ed student. So when when they're intertwining with each other, it's hard to break it down.
I know there has to be some generality when we start peeling this thing. But still, the more you do that, I think we will understand better.
Okay.
Definitely, for sure. For example, even the counseling, 12 people certainly work on different things, all right, for different schools. But as more we go into that through your office, we will understand better and so on. I think the overall school district definitely benefit from that kind of data analysis to help us all have that conceptual things. We want to improve ourselves. Where do we spend the money, and how do we spend the money? Yeah.
All right, thank you.
And you may have to add staff to your office to.
Right.
I think that was the purpose of this presentation.
Don't ask me to be an intern, okay?
I think that was the purpose of this presentation, and going through like the FTEs in each building and what the different services that each building is providing, and I think that was the purpose of behind it, and changing this budget around last year, presentation I should say, around last year. So I think you guys did an excellent job as always, Chris. Thank you.
And
thank you
just
to the principal.
Last slide here again is on the projected bond vote in May. Again, we've talked about it over the last few meetings. We'll really kick it into gear over the next couple months. Again, the approximate size of the project is about $63.9 million, which is slightly down from the 64. I'm not sure if it said 64.1 or if it said 64 last year.
64.1.
Last meeting, as we reduced a little bit of the scope here, again, just to make sure we can kind of keep that cost neutral for taxpayers as we have debt falling off and we're going to bring on the new debt. But again, we'll dive into this heavily over the next couple months as we get a little closer to the vote.
And the 63.9 includes the 1.8 from the capital
That's
reserve?
included in there. So the approximate size of the bonds that we'd be looking to borrow would be, just over 62 million. And again, I'll just, size of the project is going, if the voters approve it, that is what it's going to be. That's the amount of money that we have to get all the work that we need to get done. Obviously, if costs increase over that time, over the next couple years, then it'll just reduce the amount of work that we can get done. If costs went lower, then we might be able to get more than we anticipated. So
There's a lot of
obviously,
unknowns.
there's a lot of unknowns. Again, we're talking about a project that's not going to start for, at least 18 months from now. Probably a good chance it's even longer than that, depending on the timing on when we get approval from SCD, State Education Department. So it's a lot of unknowns to predict for the next couple of years. So.
And as we gear this up, I think it'll be important to discuss why it's important that we keep our debt service level.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chris. All right, let me get back to the agenda here. Okay, so now we have our reports by committee chairs and meeting liaisons. Does anyone have any reports? Save the policy one for when we get to the policies. Let's see. I know we just met at CWAC recently. I know we're gearing up to, and we're going to be meeting continually over the next couple months because Phil Kavanaugh is having us design the Wellness Summit for the spring. So that's very exciting. And it was a really great meeting actually on Friday. We watched this wonderful video about taking care of yourself mentally is just as important as taking care of yourself physically. It's a good reminder for everybody, I think. In addition, we also talked about we gave Mr. Kavanaugh feedback on a survey to replace that co-vitality survey. While all the surveys are free, the sticking point seems to be the service to gather the data and administer the survey and what have you. So that's kind of where the hiccup is for now. So I'll keep you guys posted. And also for West Putt, I attended the legislative session with West Putt on the 30th, Westchester Putnam School Board Association. Sorry, I don't mean to. And I have many notes, which I'll scan in and share with the board. Everyone seemed to be pleased that we're in a slightly better position than last year regarding foundation aid, but there's still a lot of uncertainty, with the numbers and where they're all going to kind of meet up between the legislature and the governor's budget. And we also talked about the advocating for a better timeline for these electric buses, and also advocating for the ability to control our own cell phone use policy. I feel like I personally feel like it shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all approach, and that what we're doing seems to be working, so I'd rather stick with that. But so those were my committee updates. Does anyone have anything else? Okay.
Now, Citizens Finance Committee, we put off till we got more data.
Yeah. So we'll obviously be diving back into that with further budget numbers, right? Okay, so we have the acceptance of warrants reports, statements of revenues, treasurer's report, and budget status report. So that's on there. Now we have the approval of the minutes. Resolved that the Board of Education, having received copies of minutes of the meetings 121, 122, 124, 125, and 2/3/25, hereby approve same. They're very short because they were mostly executive sessions, just so as everyone knows.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, brings us to the personnel agenda. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, hereby approves the attached personnel agenda.
So moved.
Second.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. CSE, CPSE meeting recommendations. Resolved that the Board of Education, having received copies of recommendations of the meetings as listed on the attached memo, hereby approves the same. The costs for these services are contained in the 24-25 budget.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Business consent agenda. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, hereby approves the attached business agenda. Before we vote, do we have to have the motion first?
Motion second.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
moved.
Second.
Okay, Chris, you have anything to highlight?
Just the first item on there is just to award the proposal for our managed network and technology support services. Again, we were utilizing the services of EduTech for the last 3 years. Coming into this school year, we were hoping to move them to B.O.E, and that kind of fell through, and we talked about that at the last budget presentation. So we did issue a request for proposal a couple months ago, and after reviewing them and meeting with a few of the vendors, we are proposing to continue our services with EduTech. They've been a pretty valuable partner over the last 4 years now, so this will set us up for next year, along with 4 additional one-year periods, if we so choose to extend.
I imagine it probably saves us some money for them having that institutional knowledge already. and not
Absolutely.
changing.
They've been, they helped develop a 5-year plan for us, and we've, been upgrading some of our infrastructure and systems through some of our lease purchase that we do each year. So they've been a tremendous asset to the district, and we are looking forward to continuing with them for many years.
And getting them through BOCES fell through because the state changed what was termed deemed aidable.
Yeah, so
the move was going to save us some money because it was going to be aidable, and then the
kind
state changed it.
fell through at the last minute, so we did extend them for this current school year. But then, again, issued that request for proposal just to, see what else is out there. And we did interview 2 others, and but ultimately made the decision to recommend continuing with EduTech.
Great, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained? Appointment of the Chemical Hygiene Officer. Resolved that Patrick May is hereby appointed as Chemical Hygiene Officer for the district effective 2/12/25 through 6/30/25 at no extra compensation.
So moved.
Second.
Can you just explain a moment what the chemical hygiene?
I was going to
officer
throw
is?
that out there, I don't know.
So in essence, they help manage all the different chemicals that we do have at primarily our high school and middle school. At our reorg meeting in July, we did appoint our director of facilities to that position, but it really should be someone in the science department. We will also partner with...
On-site at the high school, I think, was the issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we are also going to partner with BOCES to help support this person as they take over the role, and so they'll be here as needed to help support.
Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained? The Somers Central School District 25-26 calendar, I know that's what a lot of people wait for. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education of the Somers Central School District hereby adopts the 25-26 school calendar for the Somers Central School District as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I don't think there are any changes from last, we
No.
looked at it at last
We
meeting.
looked at it
right?
at the last board meeting. It was, went through the proposed calendar. There have not been any changes to that, so this is the calendar for next year.
So first
And
day,
that's 2 weeks in December, January, right?
yeah.
Correct.
And first day of school will be September 2nd, 2025. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained? Okay, notice of intent to declare, ooh, do I have to read this whole thing? Okay, notice of intent to declare lead agency under New York SCRA. Whereas the Board of Education of the Somers Central School District is considering undertaking a capital improvements project consisting of new concrete curbs, sidewalks, and walkways, asphalt repairs, replacement, interior and exterior replacement in kind, drainage infrastructure.
You could just
Oh,
say
wait.
as listed.
Okay, as listed? Thank you, Nancy. Whereas seeker, as listed, whereas the scope of the proposed action is still being considered by the board and may be reduced during the period of the State Environmental Quality Review Act review, and whereas a full environmental assessment form and Part 1 dated February 11th, 2025 was prepared for the Somers Central School District by H2M architects and engineers and has been reviewed by the board. And whereas since the Somers Middle School is eligible for listing on the National or State Historic Register and Primrose Elementary School is adjacent to a park, if the project being considered will exceed 25% of a Type 1 threshold, physical alteration of 2.5 acres of land disturbance, more than 25,000 square feet of gross floor area of new buildings, or more than 12,500 square feet of gross floor area of additions or expansions of existing buildings, the proposed action will be classified under SECRA as a Type 1 pursuant to 6 MYCRR 617.4B9. And whereas SECRA requires a coordinated review for Type 1 actions, now therefore be it resolved that the board hereby classifies the entire project being considered as a Type 1 action, declares its intent to act as lead agency for the project, and directs its architect, H2M Architects and Engineers, to circulate the board's notice of intent to declare the lead agency to all known involved and interested agencies with a copy of this resolution, the full environmental assessment form, Part 1, and all existing project materials.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed,
Repeat it?
abstained?
Yeah, could you repeat that?
Told you, I'm trying here. The memorandum of agreement for the Somers Faculty Association and Somers Central School District, whereas negotiations have been ongoing between the bargaining team for the Somers Central School District and the bargaining team for the Somers Faculty Association to reopen and extend the 21-26 agreement between the parties, and whereas these negotiations have resulted in a tentative agreement contained in a memorandum of agreement dated February 11, 2025, which has been ratified by the membership of the Somers Faculty Association, and whereas the Board of Education of the Somers Central School District has reviewed the terms of the memorandum of agreement and finds that a settlement consistent with the terms contained therein is in the best interest of the district. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Somers Central School District hereby approves and ratifies the terms of the aforesaid memorandum of agreement and hereby authorizes the superintendent of schools and the board president to execute a collective bargaining agreement consistent with the terms thereof.
So moved.
Second.
Do we want to, we're good? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained? Okay. This brings us to policies. So should we have a discussion before I read the resolution, or should we do the discussion after I read the resolution?
I can give 2 minutes sort of
Okay.
quick summary. Basically, there's a lot of updates according to the law and so on. The first one, 1120, is related to school so-called district records. It's updated language. The 4772 is related to the graduation ceremony. In that, important things added that for student conduct reason can be violating student code will what's the language exactly? I
If
can't
they
remember.
violate the student
you will not be
code or
able
other
to,
rules, they
attend
might
this
be able to
graduation,
attend.
right? That's 4773 is
They also extended the age to
right.
22 from
the
21.
service age is from 21, 22, so it's in the 4773. And the 5500 and the 5580 is related to student, privacy. Again, it's updated language. Now, the 8230 is school safety plans. That we have, again, language cleanup, something is not really that critical there. Although in that aspect, I did suggest something, but we discussed a bit, is that there's nothing mentioned about our safety committee role in any of this document. Perhaps we could think about that. We do have a safety committee, okay? And what do they do for helping student safety plans? Then AD 635 is on data privacy, and again, that's per law updating. And 9520.6 is the rights of employees to express breast milk. Okay, again, it's just a couple of updates on that. One thing I would like to add is I did suggest the policy committees to consider, after we have, we consider as the board, the total, consider we have successfully sort of concluded our search of superintendents. We should.
When we do, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, we should conclude soon. And that experience is very valuable, and that the board, all members, really sort of appreciated this whole process that helped us. And I suggested for the policy committee to study this, or to document in a way to come up with a policy how the school district should go through the process in terms of search for a superintendent. We don't have that. I think it's good to define it, and who should be involved, what community should be involved, the school should be involved, so on, and what the board's due diligence should be. As one place, we have a clear documentation so that the school board, we always have new members coming in and out, and sometimes people only serve 3 years. Hopefully, we don't have to search superintendent every 3 years, but some school districts do. So I think it's probably wise for us to think, about rain and the sunny days. So let's define that, have that defined in our policy. Okay, that's my report.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments on the policies as they're, this is just the first reading, so there's going to be a second reading at the next meeting?
Right. I just wanted to say that initially, that it's good practice for the school board to review its policies on a regular basis, which is what we're doing with this first reading for all of these policies. We look at them for clarity and any changes to state rules and regulations and laws. The edits are made, we review them as a committee, and then they're brought to the board for the first read. And then over the period of time between this meeting and the next meeting, the board members who are not on the policy committee have an opportunity to review the suggested edits. And then at the board meeting, March 11th, they will be approved.
Oh, I forgot to mention, Harry, you actually made a point on this, the suggestion I made to do these policies for superintendent search. You suggest that we use this
I
retreat.
suggested that the board consider adding it to the board retreat in July or August when the new superintendent is in place. New board members will be in place. At that point, they can review the recommendation and decide if it's worth the effort to put together another policy for that purpose. Yes.
Okay, so, everyone take a moment to read these in their spare time, and when we reconvene on the 11th, we'll talk about any changes that may need to be made, and we can probably approve them. But most of them have to do with, from what I looked at, it looked like most of them had to do with the changes to Section 2D in the education law, and just points of clarification. The 22 years. So the 22 years age requirement would be for the year that they turn 20, the school year that they turn 21.
Currently, it was the school year they turned 21. It was changed to the school
22.
year. Now it's 22.
Yeah.
Right.
And it won't be, we kick them out on their 22nd birthday, it'll be, they finish that year.
End of the school year in which they turn 22.
Okay.
Which had been the end of the school year in which they turned 21.
Right.
That was increased to 22, so it's the end of the school year in which they turned 22. And I would like to take a moment to thank Nancy for putting all that together and making the recommended changes and preparing it for our agenda tonight.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. You definitely put a lot of work into this. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of Somers Central School District does hereby accept the following revised policies for a first reading. 1120 school district records, 4772 graduation ceremonies, 4773 diploma and credential options for students with disabilities, 5500 student records, 5550 student privacy, 8130 school safety plans and teams, 8635R info and data privacy, security breach and notification, and 9520.6 rights of employees to express breast milk in a workplace.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained? Okay. This brings us to our second public comment section for general school topics. Is there any public comments? Okay. Now that brings us to our final board comments. Look at that, Chris, you were right.
Hey, we're not done yet.
That's true. Okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
February is a really busy month, and it is Black History Month, and I wanted to say let's honor our prominent leaders and cultural heritage. Also, I found out from the board that I've been looking at during the whole meeting that it's Susan B. Anthony Day on Saturday, and she paved the way for the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote in 1920. We also have President's Day on Monday, and that'll be a nice long holiday. And Ramadan begins on the 28th, so enjoy.
Chris, thanks for your finance report. It's the highlight of my year, waiting for this.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
No, thanks for putting that together. I know it's a lot of work, and thank you for all the administrators to come out here and speak. I know it was a tough start to the week, and I just want to thank Harry and the team for the quick response to everything. This is, the second sort of tragedy that's fallen upon the school and, this year, and you guys have been handling it great, and it's a tough situation, but, thank you again to everybody, and, how quickly you got everything done, put the message out, put the 2-hour delay in, and went and, spoke to the kids and got counseling for both the staff and the children together. Thank you.
I echo Don said, so I'm not going to repeat that, but to the budget presentation, I always liked Chris's presentation, and as I said before, and I also believe that through data, you'll really find a lot of things then you can extrapolate into a more intellectual level to understand what the world really is about. I'm sure a lot of people read news today, and through auditing, you can discover a lot of things, okay, and exciting ones, that how the money was spent and so on and so forth. So we're not going to audit your office, but I think...
We get audited all the time.
I think we get audited every year by law, and
I
we
know,
come out with
but-
flying colors. So I just like
But
to
I think...
make sure everyone knows that.
voluntarily to understand, our data is very important, and appreciate you have been, helpful. Thank you.
I want to thank Chris for shifting the budget presentation to a building-focused presentation. I think that's quite helpful as at least a good starting point on how we look at the expenses of how we're using the taxpayers' money to educate our children. I want to also thank the building leaders. Back in my day, you were all called principals, and building leader, what does that mean? But I want to thank the building leaders for coming in and really doing, I think, a super job of tying your budget requests to those elements of excellence that we've been talking about from the beginning of the school year. And I think that really mirrors and matches what it is that exactly we're trying to do here in our schools. I think it's also important to take a moment and reflect on the grieving process with the loss of Ms. Baldes this week, and what that means to the community and what that means to the children. I think reflects the importance of what it is that you do and what it is that your teams do. Educators have an impact on children that goes well beyond teaching them how to read or write or how to do mathematics. Other than parents, teachers probably are the most important influence on our children. And as we go through the budget process and look at the amount of money that the community is investing in the schools and investing in the children, I think it's important to understand that, because the pain that we're going through the loss of a teacher tells us just how important what you do every day in these buildings is to the learners. And that's why we're here, right? So I just want to say, as we go through the next process and looking at the revenues that we're expecting to come in, and I think everyone here is working to do everything we possibly can to keep those expenses down to the bare minimum with the tax levy, with what we need to do. It's important to understand that education is expensive, but it's a lot cheaper than ignorance, right? We need to invest in the schools and the teachers and the people who make that education possible, because of the importance of what it is that we do here every day in these buildings. And so this budget process isn't just a matter of numbers, where the expenses are and where the revenue is coming from to meet those expenses in a balanced way. I like your slide too with the little elephants there on the scales. But it reflects our community's investment in the future of our children. And I think that's really important. And I want to thank everyone who's had a part in putting this budget together and coming in and explaining to the public what it is we're doing with the taxpayers' money. So thank you all very much.
Would echo what Dom had said earlier. The good job everybody did with this tragedy the past couple of days. I'd also like to thank the administration for coming out and, like Daryl said, explaining it to everybody. It kind of helps the process along quicker. It helps people realize what we need, what we don't have, and what we do need. And Chris, thank you for putting it all together. Good job.
Thank you.
They didn't do it alone.
Yeah, you know, love and condolences, of course, to Ms. Valdez's family and the community. I don't think I can say anything any better than what anyone else has already said. Very meaningful. The budget process and presentation, you know, that's been an evolution over the years, and I absolutely appreciate how we've gotten to this point where it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes a lot of sense how we're following along, and that's through the whole feedback loop of how it's come every year. You look at it and you say, well, you know, maybe there were questions about this, that, or the other thing, and I think it keeps evolving, and we've gotten in a good place. Obviously, if there's confusion out there for anyone, I know the district is always open to being clear and transparent about everything, so we appreciate that. I had a couple of Tusker Pride things, if I can throw them out there.
Absolutely. I appreciate, just so everyone knows, I actually kind of took that off the agenda so that we could focus on Mrs. Valdez today at the beginning, but yes, please.
Yeah,
There's so much to celebrate as well.
There's a lot, and otherwise there's no way we can circle around and hit them. These are just a couple of things. My own observations, one being, for those who know Thelma Barlow, and I just have great pride that the town and those that put that together, the crosswalk over in front of the Chicos, thought to give her that honor. And I know it was already in the newspaper, but coming up in the district with my kids, I remember her. There was none better to control traffic in the front, none. And I appreciate all of our officers who are out there. They're doing a great job, but I mean, singularly, she's a special person, so I love that honor. Science research has their practice night tonight.
Yeah, that's
so
always
that's a big
problem.
deal.
Yeah,
Yes.
always.
And for the community members who may have otherwise been here at our board meeting that are there volunteering, doing some judging for the practice, thank you for everyone who gets involved. That's a great thing about our community, and I know they can always use more. So anyone out there, check it out. It's really a great process. I had the pleasure of attending a recent coffee house at the high school, and that's just another thing that it's a community in the school. The students really, it's student driven, and they put this together. And for those that don't know, it happens at the high school. Students come and they perform. It's musical performances. It can be singing, a lot of instruments, a ton of talent, and even more so is just a ton of support from everyone, from all the students who are there. It's just phenomenal. You know, it's not easy to get up and perform in front of someone, but when you have that type of community and peers that are supportive, you know, it's just amazing that we have that in our school, and it's just a great example. I think there's another one coming up in May, or I don't have the exact date. So, a lot of pride. Thank you.
I also wanted to just thank Harry and everyone in the administration and here at the middle school of how you guys all pulled together on a Sunday night and were able to get all of that into place and have the teachers, not only the students, but also the teachers feel supported coming into work on Monday into a very hard situation. So that was well done, and thank you. I always appreciate that about our school district of how we always look out for one another and make sure that it's that everyone can feel supported in moments like these. On a totally different note, we were the convenings for the regionalization thing the invitations went out. So at this point, it's going to be what, superintendent and board members for now?
Superintendent and board presidents.
Oh, board presidents, okay. So for February 27th, so I've marked my calendar for the first one. I will definitely be, actually I'll be at both of them, but February 27th is the first one, and I'll continue to keep Harry and I will both continue to keep the public updated on what's going on there. As we said, there's no commitment to anything. It's just a matter of starting to have a conversation. And as we proceed, we'll see, and hopefully there'll be more places for different community input as we go along too. We'll see. We'll find out. I also want to thank you, Chris, for another wonderful budget presentation. You know, this is my third year on the board, and I have to say, like, I love how we've made those changes from last year, from last year and this year, of just making those connections between the numbers and what we're actually providing and what we're doing here in the students, because that's what this is all about, right? That's why we're all here. We're here for the students, and it is a hefty investment, but it's a worthy investment. And I think it's important to make those connections and see where the money is going. Especially with, you know, when we get that public budget document, it's not very clear. And like, this is no offense, but there's just not clear as to exactly what, you know, because everything's in a budget code, and that's how Chris has to run it, and I get that, and that's why we have such wonderful audits every year. But but it doesn't tell the story of our school district, and it doesn't tell the story of what is happening at each of these buildings. So. I appreciate these budget presentations because it really does, and I appreciate the time that you guys put into it and coming out and highlighting what you're doing in each of our school buildings. I think that's important for the voters to understand, so before they, you know, check off that box on May whatever, they'll know what they're voting for. So thank you for that, and yeah, I think that's all I have.
As has been mentioned, it was a very difficult day yesterday. I appreciate the comments, but I don't deserve the credit for pulling that all together. It really goes to Jen Mangone and the middle school administration, and to the learning office staff, and to Dina Miller and HR and all of the other administrators. This was truly a team effort, but the real hard work was done at the middle school principal's office, and she really deserves all that credit. So thank you, Jen. I appreciate everything that you did to help make this somewhat bearable. And we'll continue as we move forward this week. So thank you. I also want to thank Jimmy Gallivan. Again, he does a great job with his presentation on the work at the high school. And he had mentioned he attended a conference in Chicago, the national conference. Jimmy's a junior at Somers High School. He is the New York State representative to the National Student Council and presented at a national conference. I can't say it enough when I just applaud the hard work of the students and like Jimmy at the high school and the work that they do. I also want to thank Chris for his presentation and the building administrators for the work that they put into it. And Chris gets the credit for a lot of it. But and you see all of the items and the slides and that. What you don't see is all of the work that goes into preparing for that, all the discussion that this group sitting here puts in to make the numbers fit, to look at our staffing. We had a half a dozen retirements this year, and we're only going to be filling a couple. We are moving people around within the district to provide the best possible educational opportunities for students with the staff that we have, like offering earth science again at the middle school. These are discussions that take place amongst this group of amazing administrators to provide the students of Somers with the best possible opportunities. So thank you, Chris, but thank you to you folks here for everything that you do to provide the backup that makes him look good.
Okay. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of the Board of Education be adjourned.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Okay.